Hello, everybody on YouTube. I am just about to go live with my special class today, which is Gut Health Menopause.
Hello,
so
everybody
I
on
am
YouTube.
super
I am just
excited
about to go live with my special class today, which is Gut Health Menopause. Hello,
So
everybody on YouTube.
Okay, so let us get started. Here we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Sophie here. Welcome to my special class that I am doing today. And the special class is all about gut health, and it's gut health and menopause. Because when we are in menopause, our gut health changes, and you need to know exactly what you need to be doing to address that. Because if you don't know what you're doing to address it, that might very well be the reason why you are struggling with things like digestive issues, with your LDL cholesterol going up, becoming more insulin resistant, getting visceral fat, getting belly fat, and all the things that we don't want to be struggling with when we are in menopause and postmenopausal. So I really want to dig into this today. I want to dig into the mechanisms a little bit so that you can really learn everything that you need to learn about gut health and how it pertains to menopause, because there's a lot. I mean, gut health is such a buzzword, isn't it? And we see it everywhere. It's like gut health and happy gut and all of that. And you go into every single health food store and there's gut health probiotics and gut health protein powders and cleanses, and goodness knows what else they are selling you for gut health. But unless you really understand the basic mechanisms of how your microbiome, which is really what we're talking about, and your entire digestion changes, when your hormones change, then you can throw whatever you want down the hatch. You can put any kind of powder or supplement or anything else, and it's really not going to make a difference. So for those of you who don't know me and you're new to me, I'm Sophie Uliano, and I just want to take a moment. Hello, please come on live. It's so nice to spend time with you. So if you're new to me, I'm Sophie Uliano, and I am a board-certified nutritionist. I am a New York Times best-selling author. I'm also a mindset coach, weight management specialist, and I specialize in helping women, mostly over the age of 45. Some women come in and work with me who are a little bit younger, but most of the women I work with are in their 50s, 60s, and even 70s. And I specialize in helping these women to get into optimal health in a way that is completely holistic. So through a lifestyle reset, through lifestyle changes, and very often that does encompass a full holistic lifestyle reset in order for these women to really get the significant results, not just sort of baby steps or like, oh, things I think are getting a little bit better. You know, when you take a supplement or you go see, I don't know, so many women go see functional doctors and they come away with all these supplements, and I say, and how do you feel? You know, is it working, basically? And they're like, well, actually, not really. So what I'm talking about is really seeing changes and experiencing changes that can be life-changing. Because if you feel better and you're releasing weight and you're actually seeing your biomarkers come down, as witnessed by your lab work, then that becomes really exciting. And you understand that you can be the CEO of your health, that you can be the CEO of your body, that you can rewrite your age and weight loss story. And I'm a great believer that you can. I am 60, just turned 60 this year, and obviously have navigated through menopause. I went into menopause when I was about 50, which is the average age, 50, 51. But I went into perimenopause way earlier, when I was around 44, started to experience some of these changes in my health, my digestion, my gut health, where I stored my fat, how I felt. And I'm like, this is not going in the right direction. And so for me, my journey really over the last 15 years has been a very personal journey of navigating my way through, and then of course taking hundreds of women through it, through this journey of menopause, because I think when you are going through these difficulties, you really want to work with somebody or listen to somebody who, number one, is 100% a stickler and invested in evidence-based data, current evidence-based data. There is so much misinformation, disinformation, and confusion out there that is the number one thing. You need to be able to trust your source, and whoever you're listening to needs to have a lot of sources at their disposal that they can corroborate exactly, particularly when it comes to nutrition and your health, that you really need. You need the scientific, credible scientific evidence. So I'm a stickler for that. And number two, it's very helpful to listen to somebody, work with somebody, be in somebody's community who is actually going through it, who is a woman who really understands what it's like to go into menopause and this next stage of your life, when there are all these big, huge life-changing changes that can completely knock you sideways. And for many women that I work with, it's like having the rug pulled from under your feet. And then, of course, at this age, we're in the sandwich generation, many of us, where we have elderly parents, if they're still alive, and many women I work with have suffered enormous loss, maybe cared for an elderly parent for years and years and then lost that parent. So they're dealing with having put themselves last for years and years and years, and then compounded with that, the added grief of losing their most important person. So there's a lot going on, and then we're dealing with work and getting our kids launched in the world and whatever it might be. A lot of the women I work with are really sort of high achieving women who are holding down high achieving jobs as well. So all this to say is that these things really affect our gut health. They affect our gut health. This workshop, this class today is about gut health. And there's a huge emotional component to it as well. And I will be talking to that a little bit. So get into the chat right now and just let me know. I'm not going to take questions until the end. So I'd rather just hold on raising your hand. But you can definitely get into the chat. And in the chat, you can, let me know where you're watching from, what your name is. And, are you having any struggles with your gut health? Are you in menopause? Let me know how old you are so that I know what I'm dealing with and who I'm talking to. And if you're listening to the recording, you're just so welcome. You're going to get an awful lot out of the recording too. So let me have a look here. Christina from Massachusetts, hello. And you're 55. You're right in the right place. I'm so glad that you are here. All right. So what I'm going to do right now is I am going to share. I have a 57, 55. Look, there you go, ladies. I'm older than all of you. I got more wisdom than all of you because I've got some years on you. Oh, wait a minute. We've got Leah, 62 from New York City. All right. Teresa, San Diego, 64. See, you're all in the right place. This is absolutely the right pocket. These are the women your age group is who I absolutely love to help, because sometimes I think we're sort of left hung out to dry, right? It's like, nah, yeah, you're too old. You're getting this. If you haven't heard often, and maybe you've heard yourself just saying this to yourself or your doctor or somebody saying, oh, I guess it's just getting older, right? I just guess it's aging, or I guess it's the way things go, the aches and the pains and the this and the that. And what you're going to hear repeatedly, Elaine, hello, Nanette, hello, Teresa. What you're going to hear repeatedly from me is that it's never too late. You're not too old. These are the three things. And this is what Diana Nyad said. And Diana Nyad is in the wonderful documentary, which I mention on almost all of my classes and workshops, because I've interviewed her and I love her. And it's called Nyad. And it's about her. She did the sort of seemingly impossible after the age of 60. And I find her so inspiring. But they're her quotes. She said, you're never too old. Never give up, don't settle, and it takes a team. And I really do believe it also takes a team. I think that certainly from my experience of witnessing the women that I help in my program, I have a program called Ignite Your Life, and the women that I help in my program, it is a very tight community, because the changes I think that are necessary to really, really dial in your health and to get you into optimal shape do require quite a significant lifestyle change, or lifestyle changes. is. And I think that it's really hard to do on your own. I think you really need a community of like-minded women. Anyway, so what I'm going to do now is I am going to share my screen, and hopefully you can see it. And I'm just going to check that you can see it actually. So somebody could let me know in the chat right now, and I'm going into the chat. Can you see my screen? Thank you, Christine. Beautiful. So now I'll go to full slideshow and we'll play from the start right here. So I'll disappear into the little box here on the side as we go through this. All right, ladies. So we're going to go through this relatively quickly. You might want to grab a paper and pen because when I teach, I tend to go through things quite quickly. So you're welcome to do that. Just grab a paper and pen as we move through. So gut health and menopause. So we're going to be going over 4 things today. 1, the connection between gut health and menopause. 2, top foods and supplements to improve gut health. 3, lifestyle tweaks to reduce bloating and energy, and gut health and belly fat. So I'm going to attempt to cover these 4 things in this little class today. So let's talk about how your gut changes after menopause. Now, most people do not talk about this, right? So if you are 30 and 40, and when I say menopause, it's when your hormones radically change, when your estrogen tanks out and drops, which it does. You know, when you go into perimenopause, or certainly when you go into menopause. Some of you might have gone into early menopause because you might have had a hysterectomy, a partial hysterectomy, chemotherapy. There's a lot of reasons why women that I work with might experience these changes much earlier than a sort of regular garden variety kind of menopause, you know, change. But it's really important because I think all of these kind of gut health things are kind of marketed to everybody, blanket kind of recommendations. And I don't believe in that anyway, because I think everything needs to be personalized. But certainly in really targeting down to what we're talking about today is women and menopausal women, there are very, very specific changes that happen. So one is that your diversity changes in your gut with these hormonal changes. And that means that beneficial microbes decrease in menopause. They decrease. And but if you're thinking, well, I'm going to run out and buy a probiotic supplement, wait, hang on, that's not the answer. Okay. And I will cover supplements, you know, when we get to the end here. Also, more alarmingly, we get more bad microbes because your microbiome, but you all heard the term microbiome, and we're beginning to learn more and more about it. But it is basically your microbiome is all over your body. It's in your skin, your eyes, your ears. It's everywhere. But I'm really focusing on the microbiome in your gut. Okay, so in your gut, a healthy microbiome is a very diverse microbiome. Think of it like a garden, right? A really healthy garden or farm, or back in the day, agriculture, would be very, very diverse, right? With lots and lots of different plants, and each one has a function and they work symbiotically together and they feed each other. And then, of course, big monoculture with all the pesticides and everything goes on, and our crops are destroyed, or not destroyed, but their nutrient density and everything's changed. And the pesticides also affects your gut health as well. But this diversity is the thing that I really want to double click on, because the diversity dramatically diminishes. So what I really want you to understand, that you're going to have less of the really good microbes and more abundance of the bad microbes. So a really healthy microbiome, you're always going to have the pathogenic microbes in there as well. But in redressing the balance and a really healthy gut microbiome is actually going to have more. You want the good bacteria to sort of way outnumber the bad. And unfortunately, the opposite can happen in menopause. And of course, that has a knock-on effect on everything, every aspect of your health, on your immunity, your belly fat, your inflammation, your appetite, your mood, your immunity, absolutely everything. So microbial diversity equals optimal health. And why I I'm so passionate about this topic is because, and I teach on all sorts of different topics as it relates to your wellness, your overall wellness and your health and weight release and belly fat release and all of that. But this really is the foundation, because if you don't have good gut health, then, you know, everything is going to suffer. And it's actually one of the first things really that we address, and that a lot of women that I work with who come into my program, that's the changes that they're going to start experiencing almost immediately. And one of the changes that they're going to experience very, very quickly is they experience their inflammation overall, their systemic inflammation going way down. So gut microbiome and metabolic changes. So the gut microbiome can affect metabolic processes such as bile acid metabolism and fiber fermentation. It can contribute to low-grade inflammation, insulin resistance. So this is very important, through bacterial metabolites and cell wall components. So that might sound a little bit scientific. So let me keep this really simple for you. These changes in your gut microbiome can affect your metabolism, how you metabolize food, and how you thus store fat, and appetite regulation as well. And these changes can also lead, as I've already said, to low-grade inflammation and, more worryingly, insulin resistance, because after the age of 50, when you go into menopause, women are at higher risk for insulin resistance. You start seeing the numbers going up. The A1C number, which is the one that you can, you'll get tested to see if you are pre-diabetic or diabetic, that can start to inch up. LDL cholesterol, which is the bad cholesterol, can also start to go up. And this is really why we're looking at these foods that I'm going to show you today will help to mitigate that. So gut microbiome and sex hormones. So the gut microbiome can participate in sex hormone reactivation and retention in postmenopausal women. So what we want postmenopausal is we don't want all this excess estrogen floating around in our bloodstream. We want to be getting rid of it, obviously, but to lower our risk of breast cancer, and other cancers. And so that's very important as well, instead of, this, to combat this hormone reactivation. Gut microbiome and cardiometabolic risk. So studies have shown that changes in gut microbiome after menopause are associated with adverse cardiometabolic risk. So this includes waist-hip ratio, BMI, visceral fat, and inflammatory markers. And I teach on these things all the time. So by the way, as a little side note, if you do not know what your waist-hip ratio is right now, please make sure you measure it, because it is very, very important that you know what that is. That is now considered a much more important marker in terms of visceral fat, obviously, than BMI. And what I will do is, in the Gorgeous for Good Facebook group, it's called Gorgeous for Good with Sophie Uliano. If you're not in that group, send a request to join that group later today. I put a video in a while ago about how exactly to measure that, but do make sure you measure it, and I'll put the optimal results in there. You need to know what that is. And it's also a really good idea to know what your inflammatory markers is. It's a good idea to know what all of your numbers are, right? To have a physical once, if not twice a year, to know what these numbers are and know what these measurements are, because everything can slowly edge up without you even kind of knowing it and being aware of it, particularly after the age of 50, until you get to a time when you're like, oh boy, you suddenly have a doctor's appointment and suddenly now you're being offered medication. And while medications can be part of a therapy for some of you, for many of you, you can actually address, before it gets too late, many of these numbers going in the wrong direction with, intensive and significant lifestyle changes. So gut health and your mood. Now, this is a really important one. I used to suffer from IBS when I was in my 20s. And I did so much work on myself, so much mindset work, mindset therapy, meditation, and really, really addressing the emotional component. Because when I was in my 20s, I was emotionally all over the place. I had all these stresses, all this undealt with stuff. And I absolutely know that it had a direct effect on my gut. My gut was perpetually well, not literally, but it felt like it was in knots. And I would bloat at the drop of a hat. And it was so unpleasant. I could literally go from sort of flat stomach to looking like I was 6 months pregnant within an hour, that kind of bloating. It was painful. It was embarrassing. And one of the main things, aside from the fact that obviously really learning about nutrition, as I have done over the last 20 years and making some big adjustments in my nutritional protocol and the way that I eat, but really the emotional part was a really big driver in alleviating the IBS that was debilitating for me. So the gut and brain constantly communicate through what's called the gut-brain axis, which involves nervous, endocrine, metabolic, and immune system pathways. There's all of these pathways, and it's bidirectional. So your gut communicates with your brain all the time, which is why the food, when my clients start eating this really healthy and amazing food, it has this knock-on effect, because the more they do that, the more they actually want to eat that food, because their gut feels better. That sends messages to their brain. They stop craving all the unhealthy foods. Their brain goes, I want more of that. So it's a complete bidirectional feedback loop that happens all the time. Gut microbes produce neurotransmitters, hormones, and metabolites that can affect our emotions, thought processes, and behaviors, right? So our microbes, again, it's bidirectional. So I could say to myself, when I was in my 20s, was it my gut microbes that were producing these neurotransmitters, and that was going to my brain, and it was this constant loop? Or was it the other way around? Is it the chicken or the egg? And we don't know. So we want to address both through lifestyle changes, not one thing, not like, oh, I'm going to eat differently or throw some probiotics down the hatch and continue life being super stressed and emotionally not dealing with some of the things that really need to be dealt with. That ain't going to work, just calling it tight. All right, eating foods high in probiotics, such as fermented foods, and prebiotics, such as high fiber foods, we're getting to that in a moment, can improve the gut microbiome and mental health. So it's really exciting. I call them happy foods, the feel-good foods. I feel amazing. Most of the time I feel good, really, really good. And I put a huge part of that down to the way that I eat. And so do my clients as well. Processed food consumption obviously negatively affects the gut microbiome, leading to adverse mental health effects via the gut-brain connection. And, it's really sad that a lot of people really do not realize that. And it breaks my heart, particularly for children. And I know a lot of families, they have no other choice. They're working 2 jobs. They just got to go to the drive-through and grab something easy and convenient and cheap for their children. But then I was somewhere the other day and watching these kids. They were like these little girls who were about 8 and 9, and watching literally what was in the basket that they were buying from Target. And I just thought, oh my gosh, they're going to go home and eat all of that food. And then, they're going to sit there probably, and they're just going to feel like they're going to feel horrible. And then it's a knock-on effect. And then are they going to be able to learn and the whole thing? We're in a bit of a pickle in our modern day food environment, aren't we? So it's not just about what we eat. Other factors such as meditation, mindset therapy can also positively influence the composition of our gut microbiota, thereby improving this gut-brain axis and our mental health. And I really believe, it's a community that lives down there. It's a really intelligent community. I want you to start thinking about the gut microbes in your gut and on your body as being, they are intelligent. And ultimately also you're eating for 2. There's a whole community in there, and the good microbes need to be fed with specific foods that we'll go over in a minute. And if you don't feed them, they're not going to proliferate and grow, and they're not going to be happy. And the bad guys will take over. So it's even more critical and more important for you to really get your nutritional protocol dialed in and optimized after menopause. You might have been able to get away with a lot more. We all did, right? When we were younger, when we were in our 20s and 30s, and even for early early 40s, but I find a lot of time women come to me because it's just not working anymore, what they used to do. So what to avoid? Okay, so what to avoid is basically, I call them the poisons, the food poisons, actually, because these foods are poisons. And when I say poison, I'm not being over dramatic, because a poison is something that and it's dose dependent, right, can cause harm and even death eventually. And again, it's really according to the dose. But these foods that I'm about to go over now, they are poisonous to your system in many ways. And some of them, if your foods are enhanced, which not almost all ultra processed food, most restaurant foods are, and 80% of what you find in the grocery store, they have added oils, they have added salt, they have added sugar, they're full of saturated fat, and all of that is really so deleterious for your gut health. So saturated fat is the number one thing. There are so many reasons why saturated fat, the main source of saturated fat, is in all meat products. And even if you think, well, it's just in red meat or processed meat, it's not. There's as much saturated fat, actually, if not more, in modern day chicken than there is even in red meat. So saturated fat, the main source is in meat, in some fish, in particularly farm-raised salmon, dairy, and in tropical oils, coconut oil and palm oil. Those are your sources of saturated fat, and you will do so much better in terms of releasing belly fat, visceral fat, driving down, or I should say, well, literally driving down your bad cholesterol, your LDL cholesterol, and your ApoB. If you've ever had an ApoB test, which is actually even more accurate determinant of your risk for cardiovascular disease. So that would be the first one. Fried food, obviously, I think we all know that. And with lots of fried food, we're still finding trans fatty acids, which are even more deleterious than saturated fat. High sodium food. So sodium, really high sodium food, is horrible for your gut health. If you think about it, a lot of sodium and a lot of salt actually kills microbes. It's a preservative. Salt is used as a preservative. It kills it kills the microbes. That's what it's there to preserve, but you don't want it in your gut. And for many other reasons, obviously, for your blood pressure, but as far as your gut is concerned, high sodium food, most food, almost everything, unless you're very, very vigilant about reading labels at the store, will have a very high sodium content. 75% of the sodium in our diet is found in packaged food, even sort of healthy packaged food. The sodium is very, very high. Soda, that can be diet soda, it can be any kind of soda. Definitely avoid it. And just a little note on soda is diet sodas can be even worse, actually, than regular sodas. Refined starches, so all refined starches, and that's going to be all your white goods and your white flours, and really any starch or complex carb that has been highly processed, stripped to the fiber, bleached. So it's all baked goods, whether it's bagels, sorry everybody, croissants, donuts, or you know what I'm talking about, but anything that is a refined starch that spikes your blood sugar. Artificial or herbal sweeteners. So obviously artificial sweeteners, chemical sweeteners, that you find in the coffee shop or whatever, but also don't forget those herbal sweeteners like stevia and monk fruit now have been shown to have an adverse effect on your gut health, and alcohol, and that's a really, really big one when it comes to gut health. So these are the things that some of the foods or additives to foods that you might have been able to get away with when you were younger, but you will not be able to get away with when you go into menopause. So top foods for gut health are going to be whole, minimally processed plant-based foods. So I can't put it more simply or more powerfully than that. So if you are going in that plant-based direction, you are definitely going in the right direction. I am not talking about a vegan diet. I want to be very clear about that, because a vegan diet can be very unhealthy. It can be full of many of those poisons that I've just been over, including very high sodium, very high sugar, lots of refined grains. It's like sort of, you know, you go to the store and it's like, oh, it's vegan and it's gluten-free. And your point is what? You know, because very often those foods, they put a health halo on certain foods. Now there's a great big long list, isn't there? It's like vegan, paleo, gluten-free, and da 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 da, with all those check marks on it. There was something I saw the other day, something ridiculous, that it was like a sorbet, you know, a fruit sorbet, and it was like vegan. Well, yes, of course it is. It's a sorbet, you know, gluten-free. Well, yeah, I wouldn't imagine that sorbet would have any gluten in it. But, you know, so be careful with those labels, those health halo labels. But so I'm not talking about a vegan diet. I'm talking about whole foods, really whole, minimally processed plant foods is really your best bet. And part of that, if it's a very well planned whole food plant-based diet, and it does need to be very well planned, particularly over the age of 50. So you need to because you've got to make sure that you're getting all the different nutrients in. But part of that is going to be prebiotic foods, and you will have prebiotic foods as part of that. You're eating all this fiber, and so many of those fibers are going to be prebiotic. You don't need to run out and get a prebiotic supplement. And probiotic foods as well, and some of the foods have probiotic properties in them too. So that's what you really want to be thinking about. Now, there's also lifestyle habits for better gut health as well. So sleep is enormously important, dialing in your circadian rhythms and getting enough exercise. So getting enough sleep is absolutely, you can't, I mean, I think I'd almost put sleep number one. And then being a nutritionist, it's always like nutrition first, nutrition first. That's the heavy lifting. That'll change everything for you. And it will, by the way. But if you are exhausted, if you're operating on 3 or 4 hours sleep, then it's going to be very hard for you to dial in a really healthy nutritional protocol. It just will be, because not getting enough sleep obviously has you exhausted, has you reaching for easy, high caloric foods. Your body will crave high caloric, fatty, you know, fried, sugary foods, because our brains are wired when we're exhausted because of evolutionary psychology to want those foods anyway. So add another layer of exhaustion on top of that. And the difficulty is that in menopause, and you can let each other know in the chat, but often in menopause, you will be suffering from sleep disturbance. And this goes to circadian rhythms, because your circadian rhythms are all over the place. Your cortisol levels are all over the place. Cortisol is another buzzword that's used a lot, right? Signs of cortisol imbalance. Well, most women that I work with, there is an imbalance, meaning that there's lower cortisol in the morning, and then sometimes in some cases it's really sky high at night, meaning you can't turn your brain off and you're just totally stressed and everything. But it's actually relatively easy to regress that balance and bring your circadian rhythms back into balance over time. But most of you will need a little bit of direction, and certainly my clients need quite a lot of coaching to know how to do that, to set up their morning, to set up their night. And a lot of it is mindset coaching, because a lot of it is really going to be implementing quite a lot of discipline and structure and putting yourself first and creating boundaries in order that you can honor yourself and put yourself first and dial these circadian rhythms back into balance so that your cortisol levels can be more regulated. But back to the sleep piece. The sleep piece is important because the only time that your gut can really repair itself is while you're sleeping. So you want to think of your gut a little bit like a cobbled street. And during the day, it takes a little bit of bashing, right? And cobbles become loose and there's a little bit of damage, and it can be stress, it can be, you know, what you're eating, it just can be the wear and tear of digestion. So it needs to be repaired. That cobble street, as it were, needs to be repaired. And the only time that it can be repaired, it's also much like the only way that your brain can be really cleaned out, trash trucks taking the debris from your brain, is during deep sleep. So you are going to need to find a way to deep sleep. And again, for many of you is going to entail a lot of mindset shifts, structuring your day differently, and maybe getting help to do so. It's never as simple as, oh, I'm just going to pop a melatonin supplement. Do you know what I mean? Or just, force myself to, I don't know, stop watching, my screen. There's a lot more to it than that. But I will say that unless these pieces are dialed in and the exercise component, because these three things go together, then nothing is going to come together. And that's why I teach a holistic lifestyle. Exercise is very important for two reasons, and getting enough exercise and the right kind of exercise. And most women over 50, I'm just saying, I would say 90% of women over 50 don't exercise nearly enough with as much endurance, time, and strength that they need to. They just don't. So that really needs to be stepped up. So exercise has been shown in studies to really help alleviate symptoms of IBS and IBD. So that's really very promising, some of the studies we're seeing. But the other thing, obviously, about exercise, I think it goes without saying, is that if you're getting enough exercise and the right kind of exercise, and you're doing your strength training in your zone 2 and all the different things, I teach very much a multimodal, meaning it needs to be strength training, it needs to be sit training, which is strength interval training. You need to get a little bit of that in, flexibility, agility, etc. When those pieces are dialed in, you are going to be more tired at night, and all this is going to lead to a better night's sleep. So getting enough exercise, really dialing down the sodium, because if you have too much sodium in a meal before you go to bed, then you're going to be peeing more during the night. So there's many different aspects that come into, and can you see how all these three, sleep, circadian rhythm, and exercise, all work together, and they're so important for your gut health. Lifestyle habits for better gut health also. And these are habits that I teach consistently with the women that I work with. Is meditation is super, super important. Prayer and meditation, and making it work for you with your, your belief system. I think some women get a bit put off thinking, oh, I've got to believe a certain thing or philosophy or whatever to meditate. No, you don't. Meditation just means being aware. It means breathing. We do a lot of breath work, where through that breath work, you just become aware, and allows you to step back and actually watch what's going on and watch your thought process, and really starting to understand through this mindful way of living the patterns, the emotional pieces maybe that you haven't dealt with that need to come up to be dealt with and to be healed. And that's where we also go to journaling, and that's just another tool that I use. So these things are so beautiful. They're beautiful, beautiful practices to dial in, particularly when you go into this next phase of your life. Because menopause is a time where, we look at all the negatives, don't we? Oh, I'm so busy and stressed and elderly parents and yada, yada. But there's so much beauty to menopause. It really is a time of our life. I really strongly believe this and experience it myself, where we get this layer of wisdom and deep connection and soul connection with ourselves. But we're only going to have that and get that beautiful bliss and pleasure and wisdom from that kind of connection if we give ourselves time to do it, and we put ourselves first, and we have lifestyle practices, not just once a month or when we go away for a retreat or something, but integrated into our everyday. And then the other piece is really getting out in nature, and there have been some fascinating studies of how being in nature and connecting to nature directly affects the health of your microbiome. All right, so visceral fat. A lot of ladies come to me and they have belly fat. And that's a big thing that a lot of ladies talk about. Oh, I've got this belly fat. And you can have belly fat and you can have visceral fat. And visceral fat isn't just belly fat. Visceral fat is fat. It's almost like you want to think of it as a spillover of fat. You're beyond your fat threshold of what can be stored as subcutaneous fat, which is the fat under the skin. And then that becomes visceral fat. And this happens very, very kind of insidiously after menopause. There can be weight creep from the age of 40 to 50, but then suddenly 50, that starts turning into visceral fat. And that is fat that can be stored even, you know, you don't have to be sort of massively overweight for this to happen. This fat can be stored in your liver, and it can be stored, you know, in your around your pancreas and your internal organs. But very often where you're going to notice that visceral fat is with that waist hip ratio, which is why I definitely want you to measure and see where you are on that scale, because this visceral fat is an organ in of itself. It's highly, highly inflammatory. And one of my biggest recommendations is kind of, you know, belly fat, and I want to get into shape aside, is let's just deal with that. The good news is that if you really make a big healthy lifestyle change, the visceral fat is the first thing that's going to go. So that's the really good news. Visceral fat and inflammation. So gut permeability, so gut microbiome characteristics can promote gut permeability. So this is sometimes known as leaky gut, okay? And this can be very worrying, and some of you may have experienced this, and this leads to inflammation, and particularly when you eat endotoxin in food, which, you know, most predominantly comes from meat, and then that leaks through leaky gut into your blood and creates, you know, massive inflammation, and also adipose dysfunction. Meaning it can, you know, create adiposity in your, you know, in your midsection. So you are eating for two, as I said before. You want to maximize your short chain fatty acids, and I'll just show you how to do that in just a second. And the only way to create these short chain fatty acids in your gut is to feed the good microbiomes with fiber and certain kinds of fiber, not necessarily a supplement. And the only foods that contain fiber are, fill in the blank, plants, right? It's what keeps them upright. It's their skeleton. And that's the fiber. But, you know, there are quite a lot of different kinds of fiber, and I'm just going to touch on that in a second. But, you know, the really good news is that with short chain fatty acids, and I'm sort of fascinated with short chain fatty acids, because when you eat certain kinds of fiber, particularly fermentable fibers, you eat them and they create, your gut microbes create these metabolites called short chain fatty acids. And short chain fatty acids do a lot of really, really great things. Now, some of the short chain fatty acids actually decrease, or production of them decreases. This is another layer that happens to your gut health in menopause, that two in particular, or in fact, one in particular, propionate, which is a short chain fatty acid, decreases. And this particular short chain fatty acid, and I hope I'm not getting too scientific there, actually affects your LDL cholesterol, your bad cholesterol, or how you sort of metabolize cholesterol. And so that's one of the pathways that is thought, one of the many pathways that is thought to be the cause of so many women postmenopausal suddenly having to take statins because their LDL is rising. But also these short chain fatty acids, once we get them alive and well and we proliferate them, and we can do that through food, it can heal your gut lining. It can bring your LDL cholesterol down. It makes you feel better. But also, most notably, it actually can help regulate your appetite significantly, because eating enough whole plant-based fibers and foods will naturally release GLP-1. Most of you have heard of GLP-1. So the semaglutide injections such as Ozempic and Wegovy, and these drugs are antagonists of GLP-1, and so stimulate that release, but you can actually do it through food, which I think is pretty exciting. So the F word that you need in order to create these short chain fatty acids is fiber. And you need a lot more fiber. Most people don't eat nearly enough fiber. And so you need two different kinds of fiber in your diet for maximum effect. And the beautiful thing about the fiber, and particularly the viscous fiber, is it slows down digestion. So it slows down the digestion of protein. It slows down the digestion of starches as well, even complex starches. So you'll be fuller for longer. You want to, slow down those, going straight through. So viscous fiber is also known as soluble fiber, and it's found in a lot of foods, but the main highlights would be oats, barley. I love barley. It's my new favorite food is barley. So I make a lot of barley soups, mushroom barley soups, and you can boil barley and then crisp it up, roast it in the oven, and it's crunchy, and you can put that on salads. It's delicious. Chia, flax, apples, pears, berries, and legumes. And some of them cross over into both of these categories. And then fermentable fiber, insoluble fiber, primarily beans, legumes, leafy greens, whole intact. That's meant to be intact grains. Okay, and high protein. So you are going to need enough protein, and all these pieces work together as well. And having enough protein is super, super, super important post-menopause, because you need to have this protein, because protein leads to, obviously, to satiety. Having high protein, I'd say a lot of women, and particularly women who are going in a plant-based direction, probably don't eat enough protein. So the women that I work with, I personalize everyone's nutritional protocol, making sure that each woman gets enough protein for her, because it's age dependent, it is activity dependent. There's a lot of things that come into it, but you do need to make sure that you're getting enough. And that's basically going to be about 30 grams 3 times daily. But here's the beautiful thing of how we can put all this together now. So your menopausal gut health dietary protocol is to up your fiber and up your plant-based protein. Because if you up your fiber and you up your plant-based protein, right, then you're hitting 2 of those beautiful yardsticks that you need to hit, and they work symbiotically together. And if you're getting most, doesn't have to be all, but if you're getting most of your protein, your high quality protein, from a source that doesn't include saturated fat or hormones or pollutants or cholesterol, right? So you're getting it mainly from plant-based sources, which contains in of itself fiber. You're going to get fiber in that from a plant-based protein, and you're getting all the antioxidants too. So it's win-win all the way around. But I will say, and I'm just going to stop sharing my little screen here, I will say that with all of this, ladies, and I've just laid down a lot here in 45 minutes, and we're almost done, and I will take a couple of questions in a second. So if you've got any questions, just think about what that question might be, and then I'll just take a couple of questions before we leave today. But all this to say is that the old way of doing things doesn't work anymore. I think that's the thing to really realize, and that it's not your fault. It's not your fault that perhaps your numbers are going up. Maybe your A1C, maybe your cholesterol numbers are going up. Maybe suddenly it almost seems like overnight you've got this visceral fat and this belly fat. And so it does require, first off, you giving yourself a lot of understanding and a lot of grace. Because if you've been struggling with being on and off diets and trying to lose weight and trying to get rid of that belly fat for years and years, and you've failed, or you've succeeded in some ways and then you fail, it really isn't your fault. You are up against so many, you're swimming upstream right now, both physiologically, both psychologically, physiologically, and living in a modern day food environment. So for you to be able to navigate, and I'm going to add one more thing that is swimming upstream, is there is so much confusion and noise and misinformation and disinformation on the internet. If you're spending any more than 5 minutes a day, raise your hand if you are. Seriously, let's be honest. On your Instagram feed or your TikTok feed or whatever you watch, you are just, you're going to, obviously, we're all a target for all this misinformation and disinformation. And it's really important. In many of the workshops I do, I really teach you how to actually read science, so you can really understand for yourself, what is credible and what, you can follow and what is not. But I think with that going on, so many women are just confused. We're in a rabbit caught in headlights, and there's so much There is just so much misinformation and disinformation that takes us away from the heavy lifting that we really, really need to do. It either takes us down a rabbit hole of untrue information, such as, I'll just off the top of my head, I'll say things like some of the myths is seed oils are really bad for you. Well, there's not enough evidence there. In fact, there's no credible data and evidence. That's just something that just went viral on the internet. Another one is soy puts you at higher risk for breast cancer. Actually, the opposite is true, and that's been debunked years and years ago. But the internet and things that go viral love a kind of, a headline like that. So that's a big one. Oh, and lectins is another one, right, that we're constantly hearing about, through various people's media machines, and so we get, and then supplements, and then you get tons and tons and tons of things of, oh, take this supplement will fix your belly fat or your gut health or whatever else it is. And the supplement industry is completely unregulated. I don't care who's selling it, it is not regulated. So being up against so much of this confusion, I think that you've got to give yourself a bit of a break and go, you know what, it is tough to really work this out when everybody's a sort of, nutrition armchair expert out there, and to really know, what you need to do. But really what you need to do is the heavy lifting, and it is the lifestyle. For some of you, there is a place maybe for, a pharmacological therapy, in terms of whether that might be, a weight loss drug or a statin or blood pressure pharmaceuticals, etc. And I'm absolutely, all for that. It can be incredibly helpful and it can save lives. But you can do that and you can make the necessary lifestyle changes. And if you're not in that place yet, make sure that you do these significant lifestyle changes now. Do not leave it. Do it now, so that you don't have to get to that place where you're like, oh, I have to take medications with, the side effects. So, you can. But it does, I would say, and a lot of women ask me, well, Sophie, how much of this do I, and I'll just quickly touch on supplements. How much supplement do I need to take? And I will never, ever just give a blanket statement of everybody needs to take this amount of vitamin D or this amount of B12 or this amount, because it's different for everybody, And there are so many, it depends. And so what I do is, that's why I really help my clients to dial in a personalized nutritional protocol that suits them and their lifestyle and their physiology and what's going on with them. So just before I get to questions, I'm actually just going to pop this in the chat. I think I've got it here. Do I have it? Oh, maybe I don't. Write it down. You can go to Sophie Uliano. Actually, I might be able to grab this. Let me see. No, I can't grab it. You can go to sophieuliano.com/apply. Write that down. And you can apply if you want to. I'll just actually write that in the chat. sophieuliano.com. I can't see. I've got to put my glasses on /apply. And you can go there and you can book, if you would like to, a free, what I call is a discovery session. So you can, there you go. You can book a free discovery session with me, and it's a sort of 20-minute session, and we can have a look at, what you're struggling with, and we can talk about whether it might be a good fit for you to work with me. I have a program that's called Ignite Your Life. Many of you have heard about it before, or read about it online, or seen all of my lovely women who have done it and testimonials and whatnot. But it is a 14-week, big, huge wellness reset. And you have literally, you're taken by the hand, and it is personalized for you. It's a ton of mindset. Mindset is the big thread, is the lifeblood that runs through this program, because everything downstream of your mindset is going to be affected unless we get this piece really dealt with first. But it's everything. It's a completely holistic mind, body, spirit, exercise, food, everything dialed in and personalized for you. So it's pretty exciting. It's very powerful. It's absolutely life-changing. And I've taken hundreds of women through this. So if you feel you need a Sherpa to take you up the quickest route from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain, who knows the terrain very, very well, but you've got some questions about whether or not it might be a good fit for you, you are welcome to book a free 20-minute call. And again, you know, if you're watching the recording, we'll send you the link in a little email. In fact, we'll send you the link to all of you. So if you choose to book that call, that's available to you. So I'm just going to take some questions now and see if there are any questions. So you can raise your hand in the Zoom chat. We have 6 more minutes left before we're at the top of the hour. So if anybody would like to ask a question about gut health, one question I did have prior to this class is somebody asked me about supplements and probiotics. So what I would say is supplements can be useful in some cases, but it's not something that I just go, everybody needs to take a prebiotic or a probiotic or even a fiber supplement. If you're eating a really well-planned whole food plant-based diet, it's very unlikely you're going to need a fiber supplement unless we have issues such as severe constipation or other digestive issues that we need to address, and in which case we may need to supplement with something that is going to help to really get things going, or even to give you a supplement that will create even more of a viscous gel layer to line your digestive system. In terms of a probiotic, some women take a probiotic supplement. Here's the thing, again, because the supplement industry is not regulated, it's very, very hard to know what to pick and what to trust, to be honest with you, when you're in the health food store or the grocery store. For the most part, I'd say don't just pick up a probiotic supplement just because, or because it's cheap. Certainly don't do that, because you're just wasting your money. It's not probably going to do you much good. And so many of these probiotic supplements that have been tested are just completely ineffective. It's just heartbreaking that, you know, I see women just wasting their money on these supplements. So if you do decide to take a probiotic supplement, then you want to take one that is, you know, has a lot of clinical trials behind it. So that's just, you know, that's something to think about. You really need to do your research on that. And I also had another question prior to the live stream, and great that you ladies are sending your questions in, is about fermented foods. And I'm really glad whoever sent that question, and I'm really glad you did send that question in, because fermented foods are incredibly important for your gut health. And so fermented foods would be my top sort of sources for fermented foods, or top choices, I should say, would be fermented veggies that you'll find in the refrigerated section of your grocery store, such as sauerkraut, kimchi, and now we're seeing a lot of these beautiful ones. There's a brand called Wild Brine, if you live in North America, and they do fermented cabbage and beet, which is my favorite one. It's this beautiful pink color. And I do recommend that you add fermented veggies to your diet every day. You could also, there's other fermented foods. You could do fermented, you know, a plant-based yogurt is also fermented to some extent, sourdough bread, but you want to be a bit careful with that and make sure that you're getting a really, you know, the proper sourdough bread. And if you're on a weight loss journey, you don't want too much of that. Kombucha to an extent, raw kombucha. You've got to be a little bit careful with raw kombucha. But fermented foods are really important, and putting fermented foods into your gut, a very recent study actually has shown that it can reduce up to, I think it was 18 inflammatory markers come down with just the addition of fermented foods. One of the questions I got was about the salt in it. So if you are being low sodium and you are salt, should you rinse off all of the brine? And what has been found, interestingly, or will that take all of the probiotics out. There is probiotic in that brine. So again, it really depends. Whoever asked that question, almost every question you will ask me, I will answer with two things. I'll go, it depends on your health status. It depends on your health outcome that you want. And then the other thing that I'll often answer with is, if anybody says, is this food good or is this food good? I'll go, compared to what? Because we always want to look at things as a whole. Is, chicken healthy? Well, compared to what? Compared to processed luncheon meats and hot dogs, yeah, it's much healthier. But compared to a beautiful plant-based protein that has antioxidants and fiber in it, no, it's not as healthy. So you always want to do the compared to piece. But back to the question of the sodium in the probiotics, because in the fermented food, because to make a fermented food, you need salt in the brine to ferment it. Again, it depends. If you have very high blood pressure and you really need to watch your salt, then I would just play careful and cautious. There are some studies to show that it's fine even with people with high blood pressure, but I would err on the side of caution and just rinse it off, and you're still going to get some probiotics in the actual food itself. Okay. So unless we have any other questions, wait a minute, we do have one. I thought we were starting. No, we're always starting, Amy, at don't freak me out, Amy. I'm like, oh my gosh, did I get on the wrong time? No, I know it was 4. I know it was 4, Amy. I'm literally breaking out into a sweat. But Amy, if you came on late, we're going to send everybody who registered the recording so you can watch the recording. So no worries there. How much fiber is recommended daily? I would say you want to get in a minimum of 30 grams of fiber a week, okay, a week. But I go for much, much more. My clients get in tons and tons of fiber because, Teresa, one of the reasons why in my program and with my clients, we don't sort of laboriously count all the different macros is because if you're eating the nutritional protocol that I laid down, you absolutely don't need to. You just know that you're getting enough fiber and you're getting tons of fiber in every single meal. So you don't really need to, I'm not so much into counting it. The only macro that you can see in this class today that I do count is protein, because it's so important, and particularly for women over 50, for satiation, for appetite regulation, for building beautiful, strong, lean muscles and all of that. Okay, we are out of time. We're at the top of the hour. Hope you enjoyed the class today. I am going to attempt to do a lot of these classes. I'm going to attempt to do one almost every single week, and I'm going to pick a different topic. Go to the Gorgeous for Good with Sophie, Gorgeous for Good with Sophie Facebook group. And you can always say topics that you want me to cover on these classes. I will do one this time next week, unless I am called for jury duty, because I'm up for that next week. So I have to make myself available. Fingers crossed for that one. But ladies, seriously, if in doubt, if you feel, I liken this to, if you're somebody who's like, I can figure this out on my own. If you're like this friend that I met the other day, and she had these beautifully painted nails, beautiful. And I went, oh my gosh, that's the most beautiful manicure. Where did you get it done? And she said, oh, I did it myself. And I went, oh, well, oh. I was like, I could not do. I mean, it was beautiful. I think it was even like a kind of gel style thing that she'd done. And I can't, I can do a basic. I sort of did that myself. But if I want to do something a little bit fancy or a little bit more involved, there's no way. I'm just going to make a pig's ear of it. But really, I liken it to, if you think you can really dial all of this in on your own, then that's absolutely fantastic and good for you, and do it and get it done and go get this sorted, because, don't wait till it's too late. But if you can't, and if you think, I really have been trying for years to do this on my own, and I absolutely do need help, and I want to work with you, Sophie, and I want you to take me by the hand so I can take the guesswork out of all this and have it personalized, then book a discovery call with me, because that way we can both start understanding whether or not it would be a good fit for you, to do my program. So what you want to do is go to sophieuliano.com/apply. Okay, and we'll send you the link. So just because I know on a chat it's hard for you to write that down, so we'll email you the link so you can book that call. And when I do a class or anything offering a call, I only have a few openings in my calendar for these calls. They go very, very quickly. There is one of me, and I am a very busy girl. I'm sure you're very busy too, but I'm very busy. So there's one of me. So you need to get that booked as soon as possible. All right. So if all goes well, I'll see